Hello students, I'm Himani Sharma, your UGC NET educator. In this new YouTube video, we are going to move forward with the concept series of Paper-II English Literature, which is related to UGC NET. So the poet of note that we are going to take a look at in today's lecture, in today's video, is none other than A.K. Ramanujan. Right? So we are going to delve deep into what are certain facts which are there, right? Some other things which are unknown about him. Apart from that, we are also going to practice certain questions which are there from the PYQs, and I have one question in store for you so that you can answer it and then find it in the pinned section, correct? Now, this is his photograph and he was born in the year 1929 in Mysore, and he passed away in the year 1993 in Chicago, Illinois. Correct? So this is certain factual information which you all, if appearing for such an examination like NET examination, you all should be knowing this one. Now moving forward, what is his full name? And I do put emphasis on full names because at times in the NET examination, there was this question where they asked for the middle name of a particular writer. And who was that writer? That was V.S. Naipaul. So you all need to be aware of those very things, that who is a writer that we are talking about, who is the person we are talking about, and what is his or her full name. So the full name of A.K. Ramanujan is Adipati Krishnaswamy Ramanujan, right? So A.K. Ramanujan. Then he was a poet, he was a translator. We are going to see that how he translated certain works and what works totally, if we see, were of prominence, which was supposed to reach masses, and he did translate those particular works. He was a folklorist and philologist, right? Wrote in both English and Kannada, and when you see that a particular writer is writing in different languages, you all should be knowing that very thing as well. Like we did in Kamala Das, we saw that she also was writing in different languages, and she had a different pen name for Malayali. Any writing that she was writing in Malayalam, that was having a different pen name, right? Madhavakutti, Kamala Madhavakutti. And when she converted to Islam, it was Kamala Suraya. So of course, you should be knowing these facts. The collected poems of A.K. Ramanujan, published in the year 1995, it was one such thing which was having the compilation of his poems, right? It received a Sahitya Akademi Award after the author's death, right? Which means that he received the Sahitya Akademi Award because this thing was published in 1995, the collected poems, right? And he passed away in the year, as we saw, he passed away in the year 1993. So, of course, this collection was published posthumously and it received the Sahitya Akademi Award. He wrote an essay, Is There an Indian Way of Thinking, which has been asked in the NET examination. So here's a fact which you all should be knowing. Now, this is the first poem that we are going to talk about of Ramanujan's, that is A River. It is published in the Striders. So there were certain collections of his which were there, of which I have a question for you all, right? So Striders is one amongst those very collections, and this particular poem, A River, was published in the collection titled The Striders in the year 1966. In this poem, he reflects on a river's symbolism and transformative power. So what does really a poet do? His job, or her job basically, is to bring forth certain imagery, to evoke something that when a reader is just reading certain words, they are trying to relate, they are trying to picturize what they are reading. If I'm talking about a rose, if I'm talking about any kind of flower, animal, so on and so forth. So even if you're reading, you're getting the experience of picturizing or visualizing that very thing. So he was a person who, symbolized the river. He used it as an imagery with having certain kind of, what do we mean by symbolism? Having certain kind of hidden meaning. So river ka certain kind of hidden meaning is there. The speaker contemplates how the river carries the past and present, how still it is flowing, it is having the past, it is having the present, representing both continuity and change. The river becomes a metaphor for life's journey, that how our life is also comprising of what? Our life journey is also comprising of past and of course what? It is comprising of present. It is comprising of future. Right? The passage of time and the inevitability of change. That means that change cannot be stopped. Change will take place. So you see the poets, the novelists, the dramatists, how they use certain kind of imagery, symbolism, etc., metaphors even for that matter in their particular works to show that yes, this is one such thing to symbolize something. This means something. Even if I'm using, as we already know, that we have come across a word like she looks. She is a rose, let's just say. So this is a metaphor only, right? It means that she is as beautiful as a rose, of course. Correct? So we're going to read the poem, A River. In Madurai, city of temples and poets who sang of city and temples, every summer a river dries to a trickle in the sand, barring the sand drips, straw and women's hair. So it is also showing, and it is showing a real image of a river which is not so clean. It is having women's hair, it is having straws, etc., clogging the water gates at the rusty bars. Under the bridges, which patches of repair all over them, the wet stones glistening like crocodiles. The dry ones, shaven water buffaloes, lounging in the sun. So the buffaloes imagery of them being in the river, trying to take a bath and lounging in the sun is being talked about in here. The poets sang only of the floods, that they did not see the positive image, but they only sang of the floods. He was there for a day when he had the floods. People everywhere talked of the inches rising, the inches of the river rising, correct? Of the precise numbers of cobbled steps run over by the water, rising on the bathing places, and the way it carried off 3 village houses. So the poets are telling us that how the flood has been there and how it destroyed at least 3 houses. One pregnant woman and a couple of cows named Gopi and Brinda. This is what I want you all to take a note of when it comes to reading poetry. Right? You all should be knowing these very names. The new poets still quoted the old poets. But no one spoke in words of the pregnant woman drowned, with perhaps twins in her, kicking at blank walls even before birth. So the imagery that he showed, that even if the babies were in the mother's womb who was pregnant, what if they would have been twins and they were just knocking at the, gates of the womb to save their own selves? He said, the river has water enough to be poetic about only once a year, and then it carries away in the first half hour 3 village houses. A couple of cows named Gopi and Brinda again, and one pregnant woman expecting identical twins with no moles on their bodies, with different colored diapers to tell them apart, to tell them that yes, my twins are different. How am I going to differentiate between them? I am going to make them wear different colored diapers to see that this one is this one is the other one. So you see the imagery that he pictured in here, and how even regardless of anything, the change will come, regardless of a woman being drowned who's pregnant, regardless of Gopi and Brinda, which are the 2 cows and the 3 houses which have been there in a village, they will keep on, the river will keep on flowing, doing what it wants to, of course. And this is how he is talking about the inevitability of what? Of change. Correct? Then, love poem for a wife, he has written a part of his second collection titled Relations. So this was one such, again, a collection of poetry in which he wrote, he compiled certain pieces of poems, and of course this was titled Relations, which was published in the year 1971. This poem is a heartfelt expression of love and devotion to the speaker's wife. His wife, he vividly describes the beauty and grace that she holds, the power that she has, right? So Ramanujan, through this very poem, is telling of his wife. So there are certain autobiographical elements in here, celebrating her presence in his life. It is filled with images of nature. So you see that he talks about nature. There are prominent themes of nature. And we also see that there are other themes which are related to relations, the reality, the nature. Even if in the previous, poem that we did, the river, it was talking about a natural scenery, but of course, with certain other things as well. Emphasizes the deep emotional connection between the speaker and his beloved, between the speaker and his wife, we are going to see, and when we read this very particular poem. Really, what keeps us apart at the end of years is unshared childhood. You cannot, for instance, meet my father. He is some years dead. Neither can I meet yours. Right? He has lately lost his temper and mellowed. So in this very passage, in this very particular stanza, right, the poet is telling, the speaker is telling that why do we have different childhoods? I am so devoted, I feel so loved towards you that I wanted us to share the same childhood. You cannot meet my father because he is dead now, and I cannot meet your father now, the father that they had when they were children as well, right? I cannot meet your father during those very times because of the fact that he now has lost his temper. He becomes angry really soon. In the transverse midnight gossip of cousins' reunions among brandy fumes, cashews, and the absences of grandparents, you suddenly grow nostalgic for my past. And I envy you for your village dog ride and the mythology. So these are certain tales that the wife has shared with her husband, and he is also saying that I am envy that you took a dog ride, you went here, you went there, right? I envy you your village dog ride and the mythology of the 7 crazy aunts. You begin to recognize me as I pass from ghost to real. And back again in the albums of family rumors in brothers' anecdotes of how noisily father bathed, slapping soap on his back. Find sources for a familiar sheep mouth look in a sepia wedding. Sepia wedding picture of father in a turban, mother standing on her bare splayed feet, silver rings on her second toes. So we see these very images, we get an idea that they are seeing an album and she is letting him know that this is how my childhood was like, these are my 7 crazy aunts, so on and so forth. So she is telling him much and much more about her own childhood, and he is getting envied that he should have been there, he should have been a part of her life from the childhood time. So the devotion, the love, the care that these people share, and of course from the husband's end, husband who is a speaker of the poem, it can be seen. Then we have self-portrait. It was published in the collection titled Striders in the year 1966. So Striders was a collection which was first collection of Ramanujan, which was published in the year 1966. The poem Self-Portrait was there. He explores the complexity of personal identity and self-perception, hence the title Self-Portrait. How do you see, how do you view your own self? The speaker reflects on various aspects of their identity, right? Highlighting the contrast between the outer self and the inner self. How am I? What am I projecting as my outer self? What am I in reality? Correct? The poem delves into the notion of the masks people wear, the perceptions that they have about others, the perceptions that they show about their own selves to other people, and the struggle to understand one's true self, that if I am showing myself as being kind, polite, etc., and in reality, I am not like that. If I see this very thing, right, for instance, then it means that I am masking myself for other people, correct? And I really don't know who I am. I resemble everyone but myself. It means that I am resembling, I am looking like, I am looking familiar like other people, but I do not look like my own self. I do not know my own self. And sometimes see in shop windows, despite the well-known laws of optics, the portrait of a stranger, date unknown, often signed in a corner by my father. So the poem is really short. It is telling us again the identity crisis of one's own self. What am I to my own self? Who am I? What is the truth of my own being? Right? Not in the ontological sense, but in the sense that the personality that I carry, the personality that I am. So that is what has been talked about in this particular poem titled Self-Portrait. Then we have Obituary, published in his poetry collection Relations, right, in 1971. Obituary is a contemplation of the fragility of human life. What is obituary basically? Obituary is when you address your any loved one who has passed away and you write something for them and then get it published in a newspaper, magazine, so on and so forth, so that other people know about it, right? The inevitability of death, that it will also come just like the change. Ramanujan ponders on the brevity and impermanence of existence, that you do not know when you are going to die. Life is so much uncertain. Emphasizing the transient nature of human accomplishment, human relationships, it encourages the reflection on the meaning and purpose of life in the face of mortality, right? So you know that yes, you are going to die, but you should be able to find the meaning, the purpose of your own life. You should be able to have that very hold on the rein of the horse called life, correct? So we are going to read it. I'll just increase the size here. Father, when he passed on, left dust on a table of papers, left debts and daughters, a bedwetting grandson named by the toss of a coin after him. So in the first stanza, we are seeing that the speaker is talking about his own father, but he is not really happy because his father is the person who has left dust on a table of papers. A table of, a pura bundle of papers is there on the table, right? Left debts and daughters who are unmarried, debts which are still there, which maybe the speaker, the poet will have to pay, right? A bedwetting grandson who was named after his own father, right? His own father, whose father? The speaker's father, correct? A house that leaned slowly through our growing years on a bent coconut tree in the yard. Being the burning type, he burned properly at the cremation. So here he is using the tone of sarcasm and saying that he was such a person who used to lose his temper, right? And because of that, he burned properly in the funeral pyre, at the funeral pyre when his, the sanskar was happening. As before, easily and at both the ends. Left his eye coin. So there are, if you would have seen Game of Thrones as well, when a person died, they had put stones on the eyes. There was a ritual, right, in Game of Thrones. But of course, in Indian system as well, in some parts of India, there is a ritual of putting coins on the eyes of the dead person, right? In the ashes, that did not look one bit different. Several spinal discs, rough, some burnt to coal for sats, to pick gingerly, chunne ke liye, unke beto ke liye chhod gaye. And throw, as the priest said, facing east, that you are supposed to, throw the ashes facing east. Where three rivers met near the railway station, no long standing headstone with his full name and 2 dates. To hold in their parentheses, the brackets that we have, everything he didn't quite manage to do himself. So he was having his name with the parenthesis, right, in the lifetime that he had, but he did not do anything much of note. Like his Caesarean birth in a Brahmin ghetto and his death by heart failure in the fruit market. So he is telling us that how his father passed away. His father passed away in a fruit market with a heart attack. But someone told me he got 2 lines in an inside column of a Madras newspaper sold by the kilo exactly 4 weeks later. So someone told me that somebody got an obituary published for his father in the Madras newspaper, but now that newspaper is being sold in kilos, right? So you see that you as a human being do not have much weightage when it comes to life. You do not know. You are just, even if somebody had paid heed to you by even getting up, getting an obituary published, but now what is the role, what is the value of that obituary if it is getting just sold in the newspaper by kilos, right? So very beautifully he has tried to talk about this very particular theme. Looking for a Cousin on a Swing appeared in the collection titled Striders in the year 1966. It is about the sexual awakening of a young woman who's a cousin and her attempts to recreate the experience that she had on a swing with her cousin. So basically there were 2 swings, they were swinging, right? The cousin and the speaker, whosoever is there. The poet, who is now an adult, describes how he connected with his female cousin at a young age and how that connection changed after the cousins grew older and moved far apart. So there is not so good, let's just say, a taboo theme according to the Indian sphere as well, that how the cousins are trying to have some kind of, when they have grown, of course, they are getting nostalgic about that very particular time when they were swinging, right? When she was 4 or 5, she sat on a village swing and her cousin, 6 or 7, sat himself against her. With every lunge of the swing, she felt him in the lunging pits of her feelings. And afterwards, we climbed a tree, she said, not very tall, but full of leaves like those of a fig tree. And we were very innocent about it. Now she looks for the swing in cities with 15 suburbs and tries to be innocent about it, that even if I say that I have felt, this is what the speaker is trying to say, right? The cousin, the female cousin, felt that she was having some kind of sexual feelings towards her own cousin, right? Not only on the crotch of a tree that looked as if it would burst under every leaf into a brood of scarlet figs if someone suddenly sneezed. Correct? So this is a poem titled Looking for a Cousin on a Swing, which is based on the sexual awakening of the people, the cousins, etc., who have been talked about in the particular poem. Now, question here is, the collected poems of Ramanujan has been divided into 4 collections, out of which 2 we have talked about in here. Arrange them in the chronological sequence. The answer to this question is option A. That is, first is Striders, which was published in the year 1966. Then we have Relations, and it is not relationships, it is relations, published in the year 1971. It is his second collection. Third is The Second Sight, 1986. And fourth is The Black Hen, 1995. So these are the 4 collections of Ramanujan, 4 poetry collections. Then we have the next question. In his poems of love and war, a collection of classic poems in English translation. So he was talked about as a translator as well when we were introducing him, right? He sought to revive an ancient poetic tradition. Choose the right word. And I hope if you would have seen the introductory part where we were talking about his biography, you can easily guess the answer here. The answer is option A. Tamil poetic tradition. Speaking of Shiva is an English translation by A.K. Ramanujan of some bhakti poems composed by Virashava scenes. What do you think is the answer here? So of course these are PYQs and there will be certain questions which will be unfamiliar to you because we will not be covering them in slides, but they will be just to test your knowledge. So you need to learn certain things on your own end as well. So what is the answer here? Option D, Kannada, right, or Kannada. Then we have U.R. Anandamurthy's Samskara was translated by This is a question which is for you all, which you all are supposed to answer in the comment section below, and we will be getting you, giving you the answers of this very particular question by pinning it in the comment section below after 2 or 3 days. So of course, you all should be pinning down, coming back again to the same video to see what was the correct answer here. Till then, you all keep on studying. And of course, the batch for English Literature and Paper 1 is going to start very soon. So you can go on the Drishti Learning app to get more information about it. Right? I see you again in another video. Thank you so much and have a good day.